On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your communication style? Do you feel you're wonderfully eloquent and dynamic, or do you need some help getting your message across? Message across. In all honesty, we think that we are amazing communicators. Okay, let's keep it real. Some of you don't even think about communication, and the rest of you might not even know what a communication style is or that it's important to know how to communicate with others. But it really is. When we communicate, we do it in several ways through our body language as well as our verbal language. Our communication style sells our product, but it can also repel people from our personalities. It lets people know that we're engaging and want to invite us into a conversation, or it can make us run the other way and want to write a letter to the Better Business Bureau. So, we want to help you as entrepreneurs understand what your style is, how you can improve it. This week's entrepreneur is John Sanchez. He was an accountant and now he is helping entrepreneurs just like you, whether you're prospective, existing, whether you're new or seasoned, improve your communication style. Don't we all need an upgrade? I think so. We want to make sure that we're writing effectively, but also that we're engaging with people, whether they're in networking events or in discovery calls. So take a listen to this feature interview with John Sanchez and upgrade your communication style. Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Entrepreneur Insider featuring our Entrepreneur of the Week, John Sanchez. He is the owner of John Sanchez USA and helps entrepreneurs upgrade their communication skills. Welcome, John. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing well. Thank you for asking. All right. So, this segment, we want to know all about you, what you do, who your audience is. So, let's start with an interesting question to kind of get you thinking, right? Um, what is one thing that entrepreneurs think they're doing well, but usually aren't when it comes to communication?
Listening.
Oh, I like that answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think most people in general are not very skilled at listening, and most people have just kind of conditioned themselves inadvertently to wait for their turn to talk, as opposed to actively listening and trying to be totally tuned into what the other person's saying.
Exactly. I love that active listening. Are there any tips or at least one tip that you would give us to kind of help us to become more effective active listeners, especially like in networking environments or if we're in a business meeting or anything like that?
Yeah. So one of the biggest tips that I stole from someone else, I can't. It's been so long, I can't remember who it was, but one of the challenges that I used to have that I still have. I'm still working on it. I'm a very curious person by nature. And so a lot of times when I'm listening, especially if someone gives like a long answer, I want to butt in and ask a question.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to maintain the habit of writing things down. So I happen to be in my office, so I have, a full size thing here, but I have a variety of different notepads depending on where I am. Um, just you can get stuff like this in the dollar store or on Amazon. You don't have to get fancy, just anything that you can use to take notes. And if someone is talking and you think of something that you are tempted to get distracted with, just write a note down and circle back to it later and try to just continue to pay attention to that person.
I
That's
like
really
that.
helped
That's
me
a
a
great
lot.
tip. Yeah, I think I can definitely see how that would be helpful. I need to utilize that tip myself. Definitely because yeah,
It's a simple
sometimes
one too.
there's so much, yeah, going on. I like that tip. Thank you. Okay. So tell us about yourself. Have you always been an entrepreneur and what made you start your business?
Oh gosh, no, I've not always been an entrepreneur. I started out on a path that I thought was the right path because it fit the criteria that I had in my head when I was in college. So I never thought about college as anything other than a way to get a better job. Neither one of my parents went to college. My dad was in the Army for 30 years. My mom worked for civil service. And they just kind of pounded into my head, you got to go to college because it's like a ticket to a better life. And I just thought it's a piece of paper that will have incentivize someone to give me a better job, a more secure job that pays better and has a better trajectory. So I chose accounting when I was in college. I got my bachelor's in accounting, and I hated it, but it checked all the boxes, right? There's tons of demand for accountants everywhere in every industry and every area of the world. It pays well and they're always in demand. And since that was my mindset of what college was for, it fit all those. And so that's what I did. And I worked in accounting and finance for big companies, for a few Fortune 500 companies like Royal Caribbean Cruises and AutoNation USA for years. And I actually became an entrepreneur accidentally. So I was working at AutoNation and I got laid off. They closed down the business unit that I worked in. So 400 and something people all at one time just got let go. And I was just sitting at home, stressed out about what I was going to do next. And I got a call. And long story short, they hired me back as a consultant. And that's kind of how I started working for myself unintentionally. And then over the years, so at that time, I did the same type of work in finance on my own as a consultant as I was doing as an employee. And in about 2011, I started to transition into doing training.
Okay.
And so that's what I focus on primarily now.
Great transition. I like how you took that story. It definitely is a story of turning lemons into lemonades and them appreciating the skill set that you had that they brought you back on. And especially because I think a lot of times people don't realize that when they do have those opportunities, because they do happen, you not only successfully were able to go back to generating income, but you turned it into an opportunity, a business, and now are thriving. So that's great. Cool. So, all right. Thanks for sharing that story with us.
Yeah.
All right. So, in your current business, we know that you do some coaching and some speaking. What other type of services do you provide, and what type of entrepreneurs can you help? Like, is there a target audience that you specifically work with?
Yeah, so I kind of work with two separate audiences. One is people that were in the seat that I was in for years doing finance and accounting work. And typically the way I serve those people is I work with associations, and the associations, as part of what they offer their members, they offer them training, because most of the people have some kind of a certification that requires some kind of ongoing continuing education. So they get that through the associations, and then they hire me to actually deliver the training. So that's sort of one audience that I serve. The other audience, and so the type of training that I do with them is typically group training on primarily communication skills. The other set of people that I serve are solopreneurs and small business owners, kind of like myself now. So I serve the people that were like I used to be and the people that are like I am now, that are looking to take their communication skills to that next level and to add some of the skills that sometimes new entrepreneurs don't realize they need to have, like sales, getting the right mindset, and a handful of other things. And typically I do those through webinars or online recorded courses, which is something that I'm just starting to add to the mix.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I love it because you actually touched on one of one of my questions that I have for you.
Okay.
In the age of social media, right? Everyone's online. Everyone thinks to grow their business, they need to have an Instagram page. Um, is visual communication what's most important right now? Like, do entrepreneurs still need to know how to express themselves in written form, in verbal form, or are those things kind of dying off?
Well, I think but I think you mentioned visual first, and I think that's actually the one that people seem to think they don't need to worry about as much because they're on Zoom. And so people assume, well, gosh, people only see me like from here up. And, so all that stuff they talk about with body language, I guess I don't need to worry about that because they can't see it. Well, you can see me more than from my neck up, and that's not by accident, right? This is
Right.
what I do for a living. So I've set up my environment so you can see more of my body language. You may have noticed I use my hands a lot, right?
Mhm.
And one of the ways that I use my hands that I teach people, that I encourage people to do, is to use open body language.
Hmm.
Open body language immediately tells people, it's our brains try to figure out immediately when we meet somebody, friend or foe, right? So if I come at you like this, the vibe, the feeling that you got from me completely changed, I'm guessing, when I went from
Mhm.
this to this.
Exactly. It does.
Super, super subtle, right? But when you see my hands like this, they're open, they're kind of at my side, I'm kind of relaxed. This just kind of says, hey, I'm a friend, nothing to be afraid of here, at a subconscious level, right? And people subconsciously then are kind of a little bit at ease without you having to go through some big rigmarole of trying to do some hacks or tips or tricks.
Hmm.
Just that simple open body language.
I
Um,
like that.
Tonality is still important. I
Mhm.
think it's important that we don't fall into bad language habits like lots of fillers, uhs and ums and these long
Yeah.
pauses.
Mhm.
There's a handful of them, but I think if more people would take a little time to design their environment, if you're working virtually, design your environment so that it's more inviting and people can see a little bit more of your body language so that you can make them immediately feel that rapport with you without having to take a lot of time and effort.
I like that tip, definitely, because as I do a lot of networking events, and it does make a difference in terms of how welcoming, people are if they feel like they can participate and want to get to know you better. So I like that tip of using, they put my hands here versus here, definitely. Okay, yeah, I love that. And so actually this might be the answer to this next question, but you may have another more insight you can share. Um, and this actually came across from my experience at a networking event. If someone doesn't come across as personable, and they seem to have more of like an aggressive communication style, like what
Mm.
tips would you give them to improve?
Now, should I be assuming that they're asking for the tips or they're open to the tips? Or are you
Yeah,
saying,
see, I was going to ask you that as well. Like, how do we make sure that they're open? So, for
yeah,
example, and I'm glad you asked that. I was at a recent networking event, and the person verbally was asking people to participate in the conversation, but they would cut people off.
mm,
They would say, "Thanks for answering my question. However, that's not what I want." So, in addition to saying, "Talk to me," then they would come behind and their words were saying, without really saying, "Hey, don't talk to me." And so, when I presented that to them, they weren't necessarily open. They kind of took it as, well, but that's not what I was trying to do. And I'm like, well, that's great, but that's not how it came across. So I guess the question would be, how do you give them tips, one, if they're open, and two, if they're not open and maybe considering that they should take a different approach?
yeah. So if they're open, that's a lot easier, obviously, right? So if they're literally saying, hey, I kind of feel like I have this issue that I need to work on. Some friends of mine who I trust have told me that I come across a little bit aggressive, and they're people that I know and I trust, so I know they're being honest. They're not just trying to, be a jerk to me. So I'm taking it to heart. And what are some things that I can do to come across less aggressive? And I would start with what we just talked about, that open body language, right? That open body language kind of gets people so they don't have their defenses up. And then go into the mode of asking questions of other people and making the other person feel like they are interesting and you're interested in them, and take it off of you. And then
Mm,
shut up and listen. So if I ask you a question, if I keep cutting you off, I'm kind of cutting myself off at the same time. So questions and then listening. If they are not receptive, if they've not asked for this in any way, shape, or form, um, I would not necessarily volunteer that up. That, hey, maybe you should try this, maybe you should try that. What I would typically do if someone is it doesn't matter what the issue is. If they don't seem to be open to whatever it is I would turn it back on me, right?
Ah,
So I
okay.
might use an example like, one of the biggest challenges that I had in my communication, and I'm still working on it, is a couple of friends of mine that I really trust told me, you come across a little rough sometimes. You tend to cut people off. And I know you do it because you're curious and you can't help interrupting, but sometimes it comes across like you're not that interested in them, right?
Right.
So I'm not putting
Hmm.
it on them, I'm putting it on me. And then just share with them some of the things that I do to try to deal with that challenge.
I like that. Thank you. Okay,
Mhm.
that's amazing. Thank you. Okay. As entrepreneurs, do we need any specific traits to become more effective communicators or upgrade our communication skills? Like, for
Uh,
example, are some people just kind of what they are, and then other people have the ability to upgrade,
yeah.
or does everyone have the ability to upgrade?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, especially from introverts, right? Because there's a
Okay.
lot of people that, not just with introversion, but with anything, some people feel like this is just the way I am and fill in the
Mm,
blank. I'm just introverted. I'm just not good with names. I'm just fill in the blank, right? The truth of the matter is, out of the box, we're all different, right? We all have strengths and weaknesses in every area. And so some of us are naturally better communicators. I have
mm,
always been a very talkative person and I've always been very curious. And that's very helpful in conversations. But it also made it challenging, like I mentioned before, with cutting people off because I was so curious and so wanted to kind of, get my questions answered. Um, so I believe that everything about communication absolutely can be learned, and the first step is our mindset. Because if we believe that that's just the way I am and I can't do anything about it, then we're not going to,
mm,
right? And there's some self awareness exercises that I do in some of my courses. There's one called the Johari window, um, which is just all about figuring out what our blind spots are. That, like,
mm.
think about when you're driving in a car and you're going to change lanes and you kind of turn around to see if it's all clear. In
Right,
every car, there's that little blind spot that you can't see. So you have to look in the
right.
in the side view mirror. Well, we don't have side view mirrors in our head, so we have
Yeah.
blind spots that are things that we don't know that we don't know.
Okay.
And some of those exercises are ways that we can open up those blind spots, and then we can start addressing it. But
That
mindset's
makes
the
sense.
biggest thing.
Definitely. Okay. And does mindset also probably helps too with just our focus? Like nowadays, it seems like a lot of people are really only focused on their thing, right? Their product, their service. A lot of times we don't even focus on what our benefit is. We just focus on, getting a sale. Does addressing that blind spot kind of help us with that aspect of improving communication as well?
As far as talking
Thinking
about
of
like
others?
benefits versus like the features of what we're offering.
Right.
Yeah, that it's funny you mention that because that seems to be the biggest recurring theme in every one of the networking groups that I'm in is
Okay.
everyone seems to constantly be struggling with how do I better communicate what that ideal customer will get when they do business with me. Because the
Hmm.
clearer you can make it that I can solve some problem you have, I can take away some pain that you have, or I can move you towards some pleasurable thing that you want, the easier it's going to be for you to say, yeah, I want to do business with you. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things I've found extremely helpful recently is just simply asking the question. Right. So
Hmm.
let's say, for example, my business is communication. Instead of just throwing things out there and hoping that one of the things that I say is going to resonate, just actually
Hmm.
ask somebody. So, yeah, I was just kind of wondering. I know you know that I do communication skills training, and to a lot of people, that just sounds so broad that sometimes it just loses its meaning, and people really don't know what I'm talking about. So, what are some of the communication issues that you've come across where you might want to kind of step up your game when it comes to your own communication?
Okay.
And then when they
Yeah.
answer you, now, if you already have something that can address that in one of the products or services you offer, Now you can transition to that, say, hey, I can help you with that, with this. And if you don't, make a note of it. And then when you're back at your office, think about, is that something where enough people have told me that they have that problem and I can solve it, that maybe I should come up with a product or service to address it? Or is
Okay.
it outside my wheelhouse? And then
Yeah.
maybe I just refer them to somebody.
I like that. I like that. Definitely. Great insight. Okay. I like that. And that helps because I know a lot of times people ask me or they say to me that their biggest struggle is, like you said, how do I talk to people about my product or service without seeming spammy? And how do I even start a conversation with a stranger? So definitely what you shared will help with both of those questions. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, Now, let's help some people out even more. Sometimes new entrepreneurs need direction, right? Like if we kind of take your experience as an example, you did not plan to start off as an entrepreneur. And then there's some seasoned entrepreneurs that have been in business, 10, 20 years. Things change, social media changes, expectations change. There's cancel culture, things change. What advice would you give a new entrepreneur, just in general, about communication concerning their business? And then what advice would you give someone that maybe needs a refresher because they've been in business so long and they're just kind of, they need to know that things change. Would you give them the same advice about communication?
I think I would give them the same advice, which is you've got to find that sweet spot of giving people communication in a way that they can receive it well. In other words, if let's say uh, I'm much more of a visual person and you're much more of an auditory person, right? You prefer to hear things versus to see things, right? There's a tendency for people to overcompensate when they take, let's say they take a class and they say, well, there's three different types of people. There's auditory, kinesthetic, and visual, right? And so give it to them the way they like it. Okay, so a big pushback and question I get all the time is, so you're saying I have to give everybody else all of my communication the way they want it. When do I get to communicate the way I want it? Right. So people start to feel almost a little resentful when they're just giving everybody everything the way they want it, but they can never communicate the way they want. The trick is not really the trick, but you got to find that sweet spot of being adaptable to give it to them enough of the way they want it without feeling like you can't be yourself. I'll give you an example. If you look at my Instagram, you will see, I won't even have to tell you where it is. You can just start going through my Instagram and you go, there it is. When I went from posting things that social media managers told me I should post, like little quotes, some quote from Abraham Lincoln or Ben Franklin or Bill Gates or whoever, right? When I went from those kind of generic quotes that everybody does, that I look at them and I go, I've seen that a million times. What's unique about that? Nothing. To putting stuff out there where I'm looking in the camera and I'm talking to you about a communication skill tip that I have that is from my heart. And I'm not looking at notes. I don't have bullet points. I don't have a script. It's just me and the camera for 2 or 3 minutes. And I just give a quick tip and then I'm done. And
Mm,
I'm trying to give it to people in various different ways. But for me, I just look at the camera and I talk and it feels natural.
yeah.
Right. So it's finding that
I like
sweet
that.
spot.
I like that. And I'm sure that makes a difference, and it allows people probably to connect with you and the wonderful things about your service, your product, your personality.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, definitely. I have to do more of that. I have to. I'll admit, I'm kind of still guilty of doing the quotes instead of getting on the camera and kind of sharing, those tidbits. But I'm
Here's
going to do it. So,
here's a tip. Here's a tip I
mm,
stole from somebody else that helped me with that. Don't
mm-hmm.
watch yourself. Don't
Oh, okay.
record it
Yeah.
and be done with it. And just
Yeah.
that was really hard for me because
Okay.
every time I would look at my videos, I wouldn't like where I was looking or my what I was wearing or the light. I would
Mm,
always find something that could have been better. And I
yeah.
caught myself sometimes just editing and editing and editing. And finally I was talking to somebody and they were like, dude, it's social media.
Yeah.
You're only talking for like 2 minutes. Just put it out there and let it go. Right.
That's definitely helpful. I need that. That is a word definitely just for me. Well, I'm sure other people would if it as well, but it's for me because I do. I find myself with that like, nope, I got to do it again. Nope, I got to fix this. So I'm glad you said that. That I'm going to take that advice. Thank you. All right. So speaking of social media,
Mhm.
um, do you find that sharing content to social media is as effective for marketing your services, as speaking and participating in-person events? Or I guess virtual.
Mm.
Yeah, I know you speak at virtual events as well.
Yeah,
So
I
is
do
social media
virtual.
as effective as being a speaker or a coach to reaching your audience?
For me, it's not been as effective as
Okay.
networking. It's less a matter of face to face versus virtual,
Mhm.
um, and more a matter of talking to someone versus just putting content out like one way. That I'm just putting it in social media and it's out there, and then I wait to see what happens. For me, it's more of a dialogue. So even like in networking groups that I'm in, where I find that it's effective, you got to follow up and you got to have those one-on-one conversations. That's where the magic happens. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're in a networking group and you've got 10 people in that group and you go around and it's like, okay, give us your 30-second commercial and tell us what you do and who's your ideal customer. That's all great. I mean, we do that
Mhm.
in networking events. That's what we do. But we have to have those one-on-one conversations to figure out who are you as a person, because there are other people on this planet that provide the same service that you do, no matter what you
Exactly.
do. So that person needs to experience you one on one to really understand what's different about the way you do it.
Yeah. And just have a conversation. I think people just really don't value the importance of having, conversations. And like you said, learning what makes you different versus the other people that do the same thing. And just to see if you can communicate. Okay, sorry. As you know, networking is my thing, right? And so having those conversations, actually just earlier today, I sent out an email to people saying, okay, here's your encouragement to have those one-on-ones, by the end of this month because it's so important. And then also giving them the reminder that when they do have those virtual conversations, that they shouldn't be a monologue, they should be a
Yeah.
dialogue.
Yeah.
So definitely, yeah, I totally agree with you on the importance of that.
And one of the challenges that I still struggle with, I'm getting better, but is being more consistent and thorough with my follow up. So there are lots of people that I meet in a group, and
Hmm.
I make a mental note. Oh, I want to follow up with that person. I'm really interested in what they do, or who they serve, or something.
Yeah,
And then the day just happens, right? You finish that meeting, and you're like, oh crap, I got another one right away, or I got one in 10 minutes. I got to go run, grab some water or coffee or whatever, and then you're back to back to back, and then it gets lost, right?
exactly.
And I can't tell you how many times I'll be in a networking meeting and go, I meant to follow up with her. I I was going to send her an email and say, hey, let's schedule a one on one, and it slipped.
Yeah,
And sometimes you
it
might not see
happens.
that person again if you don't follow up.
Exactly. And that's usually more of what happens than not. So that's an excellent point. Is there and I guess everyone, when they follow up, they should do kind of their preferred, I hate to say kind of preferred, but like their style, like, whether some people follow up best on the phone, some people follow up best in email or
Mhm.
LinkedIn. Is that the best thing to do? Like I know earlier we talked about kind of connecting with people where they are, but when we do follow up, should we still just kind of do what works best for us as long as we're making that follow up?
So again, it's kind of a sweet spot. Ideally, if my accountant brain would say have a system and stick to it, right? Because
Mm.
if you have a system that works, then all you have to do is work that system, and you know that you're going to get consistent results. The flip side of that is if I know you're a phone person and I email you, the chances that you're going to respond to that are less. It doesn't mean you won't respond, but there are
Right.
people that I know that they want to pick up the phone. They want to hear that voice. I know
Yeah.
some
Okay.
people that I have a friend who has literally told their kids, her own kids, don't call me unless it's an emergency. She just hates talking on the phone. It's like, if you call me at 3 in the morning, I'll pick up the phone, but it better be a darn emergency, because she
Yeah,
just doesn't
exactly.
like talking on the phone. Um,
Yeah.
so I text her or I email her, right? Um, I, I kind of go back and forth on that one. So I wish I could give you an
Yeah.
expert answer on it, but I struggle with it myself.
Okay. But you actually did answer because like you said, sometimes we do have to, if we can, know what people prefer. And if we don't, then having our systems in place is
Yeah.
at least is better than doing nothing. So no, you definitely answered that question. Um, and what social media platforms are you on? We're going to share it, of course, down in the show notes, but are you what platforms are you on that we can find out more about you, your business?
LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter are the main ones.
Okay.
I
Okay,
do have a
perfect.
Facebook. I have a Facebook page and a Facebook group, but those are kind of new to the fold. So if you go to those, there's not really much posted on those yet. So
Okay. And are they all the usernames on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, all your name, or what are the usernames on those platforms?
so all three of those are FPA John. FPA
Okay.
like Frank Papa Alpha John John.
Perfect. Okay. We'll definitely look out for you and encourage everyone that's watching in the future to visit, to follow, and support and share you on social media as well. And I know on your website there is a section called Feed Your Brain, which besides the fact that I love that that name, can you tell us what that section is all about?
Sure. So Feed Your Brain is every week I send out to anyone that signs up for it 3 book summaries. And we have a partnership with a company called Read It For Me. It's a book summary service. And it's something that, you can subscribe to it and they have all kinds of other stuff. But when you sign up on that page, on the Feed Your Brain page, you will get 3 free book summaries every week in an audio and a video format, and they're all 12 minutes or less. And they're all of mostly all the hottest books that are out there. So things like Atomic Habits and Start With Why. And the list of books was created from a list that was taken from interviewing a handful of super successful people and asking them what their favorite books were, and then kind of honing that down to a list to start with.
Ah, okay. I love the service. I'm a subscriber and it's a definite
Okay.
service, it would definitely benefit. So I encourage everyone to subscribe. So thank you for providing that service. Um, do you have any special events or activities that you can share with us that are coming up that we can either support or share, learn more about you?
I have some events that are coming up in November 8th, actually. It is an in person conference that I'll be speaking at in Washington, D.C. It's a client that I've worked with for this is the 9th year. It's the Association for Financial Professionals. And every year, their big conference, they get 6 or 7 thousand people that attend. And they usually get pretty big keynotes. This year, I think it's Tony Hawk is one of the skateboard guy. He's one of
Yeah.
the keynotes. Their first year, I have to say, he was my favorite so far. The first year that I spoke at it, the keynote was Colin Powell, um,
Oh, wow.
and that was the first time I spoke for them, so that was like a big deal for me. But
Yeah.
they also have a virtual part to that as well.
Okay.
So if it's not something that you would go to in person in Washington, D.C., you can participate virtually. And you can go to afponline.org, and
Okay.
that will take you to all the information for that event.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we'll make sure that we share that in the show notes as well,
Cool.
so that we can support the event. That sounds like an exciting event and very informative. Um, So we have learned so much about you, John. I appreciate the time that you spent with us and tell us all about your business. Some very, very, very not just helpful tips, but tips that will really kind of upgrade us and get us to the next point in our relationships, both personal and professional. So before we close, let me just ask what tips or what do you wish, I guess is a better way to put, that entrepreneurs knew or, I guess let me put it this way. What is it that you learned from when you started your business to where you are now that you would say, gosh, I wish I knew that. I would tell the next person to kind of save them a
Ooh,
headache.
that one's that one's easy, and it It makes me want to kick myself because it's such an easy answer, and it's to do what you love. You've heard it a million times, and the reason I say I kick myself when I think about it is I've heard that my whole life, right? You hear people, it's always people who are successful doing something they love that tell you that, right? And when I was younger, I used to say, yeah, do what you love. Like my friends in college who had some degree that was really fun to get that degree, but they're not going to make any money when they get out of college. That was my genius mind at work. I thought, well, I'm going to make a lot of money because
Yeah.
I'm getting a degree in accounting, and I was all like high and mighty about it. And then I got my degree and I went out in the workforce and I hated my job. And I hated my job for years and years, and almost like by attrition, like it wore me down and wore me down to the point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And luckily I came across training and finally figured out that this is what I wanted to do. And I finally realized that if you're really good at something, it doesn't matter what it is. You can make a good living. I mean, geez, there's people that are just YouTubers. There are people that are doing makeup video, how to apply your makeup.
Yeah.
There's a
Mm-hmm.
kid who does what do they call them, unboxing videos.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He unboxes toys. His dad sits
Yeah.
there with him, and his dad
Mm-hmm.
brings in whatever the toy was that came in the mail, and the little kid unboxes the toy, and the kid does a toy review and
Yep.
makes a crap ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Yep.
moral of the story is my little pea brain thought, well, oh, you can only make good money if you do these certain jobs, because that's what I thought for whatever reason. If you kick butt at what you do, you can make a good living doing anything. So find what the heck you love and go do that and get better at it.
Yes. I love that.
And
Thank
get
you
good at
so much.
marketing.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I'm still
Yeah.
working on that part of it.
For marketing. Yeah. I think because a lot of times we don't really know how to market ourselves, right? So I'm glad, that definitely is a process. Unless, like you said, you're that little kid that's making $1 million with Walmart deals, unboxing stuff. His marketing apparently is spot on.
I'm baffled by it. I see people that just take off with some
Hmm.
idea that seems so simplistic.
Yeah.
It resonates with people.
Yeah. But like you said, it's what they love, and I think it shows. So that
Yeah.
apparently is what the difference is. So thank you. No, and that is an amazing piece of advice, an amazing reminder for the rest of us that we don't just kind of have to do what other people say. We can actually do, what we love to make life matter. So thank you so much. All right, Don. So before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with us? I want to thank you so much for this interview. It's been amazing, and I've learned so much. I want to give
I
you the
just
final say though before we close.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share this time with you and to talk to your audience and to just share a few ideas. And if there's some way that I can help whoever's listening to this with anything to do with communication, mindset, or anything along those lines, feel free to reach out to me. It doesn't have to be to buy a product. If you just want to send me an email with a question or connect on social media, I am always willing to help out with whatever I can when it's in my wheelhouse of things where I actually can help somebody.
Well, I definitely appreciate, and to everyone watching this, all of John's information will be posted down below. As always, I encourage you to connect with him. Like you said, reach out, say hello, start a conversation, ask a question, but support him on social media. Look out for his event, and most importantly, be sure to share him because you never know who in your community could use an upgrade with their communication skills. So
You
thank
never
you
know.
so much, John.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Okay. Not only did John answer all of my questions and provide insight to all of us as entrepreneurs, I know that you got some tips and some tricks that you can use right now to improve and upgrade your communication style. If you have any questions about them or want more information about John's services, reach out to him today. All of his information is posted down below on the show notes. Definitely follow, and support him on social media and share him with your community. Even if you don't feel like you need his services, someone else definitely does. Now, this episode was brought to you by Majestic Health. If you have any questions about improving your physical fitness or your health to get your sexy back, reach out to Sasha Rosa today. As always, this show is brought to you in partnership with Relationship Entertainment Television. Be sure to subscribe and check out their full line of diverse and positive, engaging entertainment television. For more information about RETV, be sure to check out their website, www.re-tv.net. They're always looking for content creators. So if you have content or you're just really passionate about what you do and think you might be able to develop some content with some help, reach out. They'll be happy to work with you. Now, as always, I am super excited that you watched this episode, and I look forward to sharing another entrepreneur with you next week. If you'd like to be featured, if you'd like to sponsor an episode, reach out to me at info@theblackentrepreneursnetwork.com. Until next time, don't forget, be great. Peace.